Going to start. So welcome to the seminar. So as usual, the seminar is an online webinar series, and people are online. You can report any technical issue in the chat, and please press the Q&A tab to ask your question, and we will allow you to speak and interact with the speaker at the discussion session. And so with that, thanks very much for introducing to the speaker.
Thank you very much for being so many coming in person. It's with great pleasure that I will be introducing Oliver Höner on behalf of the team Evolutionary Anthropology from the ISEN. My name is Yves Davidian, in case many of you might not know me. I am a postdoc in that team as well. And Oliver is at the moment a guest scientist in that team for a few years now. Oliver is a senior scientist at the Leibniz Institute for Zoo and Wildlife Research in Berlin, in Germany. And he has, like some scientists, tend to focus on a few key topics through their career. Oliver has done another strategy and focus on one species and explore many different topics connected to that species. And that species is spotted hyenas. He has done his PhD on spotted hyenas while being based in Germany, and he has founded one of the few long-term research projects on mammals, but in spotted hyenas specifically. It's a long-term, decade-long, about almost 30-year-long field individual-based project. And Oliver is investing a lot of time in the field, also building a relationship with the local authorities, trying to as well transfer knowledge and train local students in Tanzania. And then you will see from this presentation, I hope, the breadth of the topics and the depth as well that he with which he tackles his questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. Thanks a lot for inviting me to present some of our work here in Montpellier. It's a particular honor to be here because clearly Montpellier has become one of the world's leading places when it comes to research in ecology evolution. And I feel somehow also connected to Montpellier because not just the host institution that I'm normally based on and that the project is based on in Berlin, but also specifically our project has benefited hugely from inspiring input from people that have come from Montpellier to join us in Berlin or that are still here as senior scientists. Now, when we talk about sex biases, it's useful to remind ourselves of how the two sexes have been defined initially. And it all started with the discovery that we can divide individuals into two types. Those that produce large and few gametes, which we define as females, and those that produce many and small gametes, which we defined as males. Now, this anisogamy has inspired scientists interested in sexual selection, sexual size dimorphism, the evolution of mating systems, and reproductive inequalities. Starting with Darwin, they proposed that different investment in gametes by the two sexes leads to sex-specific adaptations in morphology, physiology, behavior, reproductive strategies. In that females invest more in parental care than males, females are more choosy than males, whereas males are more eager to mate, more competition between males to get access to females, and they invest less in parental care. This has also been termed as conventional sex roles. Now we can see there is a conflict between these two tactics, and we talk about sexual conflict. And it was expected that males would invest more in competitive traits in weaponry than females, and have higher reproductive inequality, reproductive skew. Now, early empirical studies found support for this, what we call the Darwin-Bateman paradigm. They found that sexual selection in these species that they studied is stronger in males than in females. We have differences in the size and strength. Normally, the males larger and stronger. Investment in parental care with males investing less, and so forth. Now, more and more studies, empirical studies, found there is actually a lot of variation. There is change in sex roles. There is a flip in sex roles. That there is different levels, variation in reproductive skew, in competitive traits, and so forth. So how can we explain this variation? Why did so many species break this Darwin-Bateman paradigm? Now, two main hypotheses have been proposed. The ecological hypothesis, if you want, or also the food availability hypothesis. It posits that, for example, in birds, if food is very highly available, females can have multiple clutches and they don't have a lot of trouble to feed them on their own. Whereas when food is very clutchy, dispersed, but clutchy in the way that males can monopolize these food resources, males manage to attract multiple females and mate with these females. Another hypothesis tested in nice studies on black cuckoo and in multiple shorebirds is that the availability of mates can influence sex roles. So the idea there is that if males are super abundant, females find it easy to find another mate quickly, whereas for males it is more difficult to find another mate, another female. So it increases the incentive of males to actually stick to the female that they have picked first and actually invest in parental care in their offspring. And we think some of our research is supporting a third hypothesis, and that's that nepotism and social convention, if you want, social factors will influence the expression of sex roles. And what I'm going to talk today about is social dominance, how nepotism is influencing social dominance, dispersal behavior, mate choice, female and male mate choice, and reproductive inequality. Now, the long-term project that Yves has mentioned is situated in this wonderful volcanic caldera, the Ngorongoro crater in northern Tanzania. That's a 300 square kilometer intact caldera, the largest intact caldera that contains a huge density of large herbivores and carnivores. And what we do there is we study the spotted hyenas, all hyenas that inhabit this crater. These are 8 different clans. And in total, we have followed the life history of more than 3,000 hyenas until now. So that's between 400 and 500, 550 hyenas at any point in time. Now, when I speak about we, I first and foremost want to mention Yves Davidian. She has joined us 15 years ago, and she has really been leading conceptual mind, scientific mind behind almost everything that we have been doing in these 10, 15 years. hugely inspirational and very typical scientific mind. Then there is Alex Courtiol. Many of you know him. He has done his PhD here in Montpellier at the ISEN. He then came to Berlin. He did other postdocs. He came to Berlin, and he is hugely instrumental in that he has set up an R package with which we can very easily and efficiently extract any kind of data from our large and not quite complex database. And he's just also a very inspirational scientist that also conceptually gives really great input. Then there's Bettina Wachter, with whom I have initiated the project and who has collected data with me and managed the project for 15 years. And Philemon Naman, our assistant, Tanzania assistant, who has joined us 10 years ago and who has made sure that everything runs smoothly. He has taken care of the equipment and collected the bulk of the basic data over these 10 years. Now, the backbone of our research is individual identification. We know every single animal based on their spot pattern. That's not always easy, and the best of AIs, you cannot easily identify them, but luckily, hyenas play with each other a bit roughly, and they feed with each other at kills intensely, and they inflict each other ear notches that we can use to identify them. We have other means to identify them, and even when they're muddy like that, we usually manage. Now, a really cool aspect, we think, of our project is that we can not only follow the individuals that are born in a clan and they stay in this clan, but also follow the fate of individuals that disperse to other clans. So we know the composition, the size of the clan they were born in, and everything about the clan they disperse into, including how successful they are in this other clan. Another important thing to clarify is this is not an isolated system. It's not an island. The walls are quite impressive, up to 600 meters high and steep, you can see in the background. But for hyenas, this is no problem. And we have hyenas that come from outside, not many, but there are some, and hyenas that leave from our clans to clans on the highlands. Now, we don't just follow hyenas, we also take samples from them. We use different methods. One is poo and the mucus for DNA, hair samples, and we collect skin biopsies. We extract DNA, and we have managed to compile one of the most comprehensive genetic pedigrees of any mammal in the world. What is really fun is what we did mostly in the past. We can train them to stand on a balance and take their weight. We just have to make sure that they don't chew on the cable because they have one of the most powerful jaws in the animal kingdom. But they're very clever, so they learn that very quickly. So some basic biology facts. They live in clans of up to 130 individuals, so that's really large groups. Multiple males and multiple females in this group. Dispersal is male bias. It's a fission fusion society, so we often encounter individuals on their own or in small subgroups that keep changing over time in size and composition. And they maintain social relationships by interacting frequently with each other. Now, the most important characteristic for today's topic is that females have an elongated clitoris, and they are the only mammal that have no vaginal introitus, no external opening. So this gives females complete control over the mating process. So they have to assume a certain posture so that the male can mate with them. And the posture the male has to assume is actually quite unstable. So if the female moves just one step forward, it will fall backwards. So what do females do with all this power? Well, they exercise mate choice. We identify two main rules by which they choose their mates. Females prefer males who were born in their clan or immigrated into their clan after their own birth. So all the dots that you see above the diagonal line here are females that follow the rules, and the ones below are females that did not follow the rules. So you can see really the vast majority of females follow this rule. So in other words, what females do when they are very small, they look around when they're in the first days and weeks after being born, they look around, they see the resident males that are in the clan, and they put them right away into a box that is labeled "Don't touch." They put it in a shelf because all these males may contain their father or older brothers. So a simple rule by which they can avoid inbreeding with their fathers or older brothers. So the other rule that they apply, young females prefer males with shorter tenures, whereas older females prefer males with older tenures. So an age-associative mating. Now, these two rules together mean for males that want to reproduce, successfully reproduce, that they should choose clans where there are many young females. Do they do that? So here to address this question, we ranked all the 8 clans according to the number of young females present each time a male selected a group. So this gave us the expected distribution across these clan ranks based on the number of young females, and we compared that with the observed distribution, so what males actually did. And this is what we found. On the very left, you have clan rank 8, so the one always the clans, because you can change over time, that had the lowest number of young females. And on the very right, you have the clans that had always the highest number of young females. And you see there is a strong preference for males to pick clans that had the highest number of young females at the time of clan selection. Now, this tactic is successful, not very surprisingly. Here I plotted the long-term reproductive success as a function of the number of young females at the time of clan selection. And you can see there's a very clear positive relationship. So the more young females that were present at the time of clan selection, the higher is the reproductive success of the male that picked this clan. So we can conclude that males adjust their clan choice to the female mate preferences and that this tactic is successful. But that doesn't tell us yet why most males disperse. They could stay at home. So this is a study that, clever study that Eve designed. She found 2 main results that are relevant in this study for the topic today. She found that males that stay at home and males that leave the clan to go into another clan, they have the exact same preference in terms of which clan they prefer, in terms of the number of young females that the clan would have. So they all prefer clans that have the highest number of young females. But the female mate choice rules mean that in most cases, this is not going to be a natal clan, it's going to be a non-natal clan. And that's what you see in the plot with the gray and black bars. Again, ranked according to the number of young females at clan choice. And you can see the best clan with the most young females is almost always a non-natal clan. So as a result, males very rarely end up choosing their own clan. Most males will disperse. So this is what we can conclude. And next, I want to talk about what this means in terms of the competition between males and males and the dominance relationships. So to answer this question, we first address a more fundamental question, and that is, how is social dominance established and maintained in group living species? It's another study led by Eve together with Colin Vuillou, who was an intern actually at that time, and with a lot of great input from Alex Courtiol and François Rousset, who is a senior scientist here also at the ISEM. What we did is we tested all the main hypotheses that were proposed to explain how social dominance is established in group living species. I'm going into only the 2 main hypotheses today. And that the first one is that intrinsic attributes determine who is dominant between 2 individuals. So it means that always the one that is stronger, that is more aggressive, has more testosterone, has the bigger horns, is going to dominate the one with smaller horns, that is smaller in size, is less aggressive. The other hypothesis is the social support hypothesis. There, the idea is that always the individual wins, is dominant, that has more friends, more supporters against the other who has less. Now, you may wonder, if you have read a bit about hyenas in the scientific literature and certainly in social media, even on Wikipedia, why we even ask this question? Because you find these kind of statements. Female hyenas are much larger and stronger than males. Females have very high levels of androgens. They're very aggressive. They dominate males in all situations and so forth. So it was picked up, of course, by social media. You have this famous video on YouTube that has been watched 18 billion times. And it says, why it sucks to be a male hyena. No adult male will ever top a single female. So really, hyenas were portrayed as the archetype of female dominance, a bit like elephant seals for male dominance. So clearly, female dominance has to be the result of differences in intrinsic traits between the sexes. But that's funny, because for a long time we have known that hyenas practice what we term rank inheritance, and what we also find in quite a number of primates. What this means is that offspring, when they are born, they assume the rank just below the mother. And hyenas give birth usually to one or two offspring. And all the others, they go down in rank. So this rank inheritance, it's not the mechanism behind it is not a genetic inheritance, it's a social inheritance. And it's a very strict, I should go back, because it's a funny picture. So what happens is these little guys here, they watch what the mother and the older sister do. Here in this case, the mother and the older sister, they put their tail up, a very clear dominance sign, and the individual on the left is showing clear submission. And the little one does exactly the same, it puts its tail up. So it does that with all the other members of the clan, and it learns which other clan members it can dominate and which ones it has to submit to. So this is very strict. Here I plotted the rank of the offspring as a function of the rank of the mother, rank of the offspring by the time they reach adulthood. And you can see they all rank just below the mother. Those that rank a bit lower are offspring that have younger siblings, because the younger siblings will outrank them. They will rank just below the mother and dominate the older sibling. More important even is that it applies to both sexes. So males and females, daughters and sons, get the rank just below the mother. So what this means is males can dominate females. And it also means, in most cases, you have an alpha female, because most males leave. So the alpha, the female at the top of the hierarchy will be, the individual at the top of the hierarchy will be a female. But when this female dies and the youngest offspring are sons, they will take over. They will be the highest ranking member of the clan. So when we look at the winning probabilities, we can just flip a coin. The winning probabilities between native females and males, it's about 50%. So clearly not all females dominate all males, and not in all situations. Another thing that we discover when we look at the hierarchy, and here I just pulled out one example with the left, the ranks from the top 1 to number 25 as an example. So you have males distributed across the whole hierarchy. And you have the natives, all natives dominating immigrants, and you have juveniles, also a bit across the whole hierarchy. So much younger individuals, smaller individuals can dominate much older and stronger and larger individuals. So again, age or physical strength are bad predictors of social rank, and overall intrinsic attributes correctly predict only about 50% of outcomes. So what about social support? Now, hyenas often interact with each other. When we have two individuals interacting with each other, here again, one on the left, dominant, on the right, subordinate one, you often have a third one, a bystander, that will support one of the two. And by looking at what this bystander does, we can derive rules of social support, and they are based on nepotism. So the first important one is bystanders will support kin over non-kin, or more closer kin to less closely related individuals. They will support the youngest offspring and its descendants. They will support natives versus non-natives. They will support the best established, those that they have known for some time versus newcomers. And they will do what the most recent common ancestor would do. Last but not least, bystanders will not get involved if they have the lowest support, because then the other two will team up and beat them up. So based on these simple rules, based on kinship and demographic information, you can build a behavioral algorithm. Simple questions with yes and no answers. And here's a few examples. So we first ask, is C, the bystander, native? If yes, we ask, is the bystander related to the two interacting individuals, and so forth. And we do that for each dyad and each possible bystander of the clan, that we let them virtually interact with each other, and we can calculate the number of supporters that each of these two individuals that interact with each other would get. And based on that, we can predict who should win, and then compare it with the actually observed outcome. And this is what we get. So in really the vast majority of cases, we correctly predict the outcome based on these simple rules of social support that we found. More than 80% when two and native individuals interact. Natives interacting with immigrants, also very high percentage of correctly predicted outcomes. So we really think that dominance in this species is established and maintained based very largely on social support. And what this means on the clan level is that it's female bias simply because hyenas lose social support when they disperse. So you have this blue individual going into a group, it doesn't have any friends there, and the others will not come and help it against the native ones. And we know that male dispersal is male biased. So all the immigrants, as we have seen in the hierarchy, will be males, whereas among the natives you have males and females. So this gives you a female biased overall dominance. So this is what we conclude from this part, with the strong influence of nepotism and social conventions. Now I would like to talk a bit about the benefits of having a social rank in this species. Spotted hyenas are large carnivores, and they don't just scavenge, as it's often mentioned. They are very good predators. They actually eat most of their food. And what they do is they hunt large prey. So they hunt wildebeest, they hunt zebras, they hunt 800-kilogram buffalo. It's a large clumped food resource, and you can easily imagine that having a high rank when it's about eating from such a clumped food resource is highly beneficial. You get a lot more food when you're a high-ranking individual. In fact, if you're a bit late to the party, you often, as a low-ranking individual, you often end up with just bones or nothing. So this translates into reproductive success. Here I've pulled present some data from colleagues working on hyenas in the Serengeti. And I'm showing the reproductive success, number of offspring per year, produced as a function of social rank of the mother. Social rank here in this case is proportional, so it's squeezed, all the ranks are squeezed into this window of -1 to +1, -1 being the lowest rank and +1 being the highest rank. And you can see reproductive success strongly increases with an increase in social rank. It goes further, cub survival also is much higher for high-ranking females than low-ranking females. And it goes to the next generation. Daughters benefit also in that they start to reproduce considerably earlier than daughters from high-ranking mothers, considerably earlier than daughters from low-ranking mothers. So clearly a silver spoon effect, as we call it, in the philopatric sex, but it also translates into the dispersing sex, quite surprisingly maybe. So sons, I use the same technique as before, ranking the clans based on the number of young females. And you can see the high-born sons here, they have a strong preference. They manage to join clans, the best clans in terms of fitness prospects, whereas medium-born sons and low-born sons, they don't manage as well. So they are almost, they choose clans, they manage to enter clans almost as expected from the distribution. There's another benefit for this high-born sons, and that's that they also start to reproduce earlier, like the daughters. Sons of high-ranking females start to reproduce in the new clan or in their, if they are philopatric, in their current clan much earlier than sons of low-ranking females. So we have silver spoon effect, quite strong silver spoon effect in both sexes. I would like to open a quick bracket because it's also going to be about nepotism and address the question, why are high-born sons doing so well? Well, we think there are three reasons for that. One is, in a study that Eve did recently, she found that twin brothers actually really like to join groups, the same group. They move more or less at the same time to the same new group, or they stay in their natal group around the same time. So 70% of all twin brothers end up in the same clan. Similarly, peers, so males that have grown up in the same clan around the same time, they also still like, at 60% of them, to join the same clan. Total strangers that grow up in different clans around the same time, they end up in different clans. And we think why they do that is to overcome resistance when they try to enter the new clan. There is some resistance by the resident members to accept new members into their clan. And if you already have someone there that managed to enter the clan, or if you go together more or less, then it's easier for males, it seems, to actually manage to join clans that they want to join, so the best clans. And high-born sons, because their mothers are more likely to raise two sons, are more likely to have a twin brother than low-born sons of low-ranking females. A second reason is that high-born sons can jump the queue. So normally, if you join a new clan, you start at the very bottom of the clan and you only slowly increase in size. Now, if one male from a clan enters a clan and a higher ranking male from his natal clan, from the same clan, joins the same clan, new clan, after him, the higher ranking male, if it happens within a period of 3 to 6 months, the higher ranking male can overtake him because they still remember the ranking from the natal clan. Another really cool thing we think is that high-born sons can actually keep the rank in the natal clan for up to 2 years after joining the new clan. So they enter a new clan, they even start to reproduce in the new clan, but they keep going back to their natal clan, keep the relationship, interact with these members of their original clan, remind them that they're still higher ranking than them, and benefit from feeding at kills. They will still have the rank just below the mother. If you are the son of the alpha female, you will eat second of all the clan in the natal clan. So they keep going back and forth. And that saves them a lot of time that they can invest in building a relationship with females. And we know that investing in building a relationship with females makes it much more likely for the females to then pick the male. Bracket closed. I go back to the silver spoon effect and want to see in the last part what consequences this has in the longer term. So for this, our PhD candidate, Martha, who has actually also spent time in Montpellier, is now in Berlin. She has looked at how things develop over generations with time. So what she did here is looked at the rank of the mother of all individuals that we have known. and is displaying the percentage of these ranks, how it's distributed. And you can see the highest percentage of the ranks is the first rank. So rank number 1 on the very left has the highest percentage. Almost 10% of all hyenas that we have ever seen have a mother that was the alpha female. And it goes on, the second, third rank, and so forth. So in a way, it displays the reproductive skew in our population in the first generation. In the second step, I call it generation, it's not a real generation, but it should display the effect. The second generation, she looked at the grandmother. What rank had the grandmother? So you can see it increased quite substantially, almost doubled for the rank number 1, also increased substantially rank number 2, and so forth. But the skew is much larger. And if you do this for more generations, you end up with all the individuals that, if you look at the rank of their grandmother, they all had an alpha female. So an extreme reproductive skew across generations. Now, this is something that we think has not been acknowledged enough, we think, in sexual selection theory and sexual selection studies, because reproductive skew is usually calculated at the first generation. So we think it's worth thinking about, at least for the systems that have silver spoon effects, that have rank inheritance that is beneficial across multiple generations, to think about what this means in terms of sexual selection, to ask how strongly in these cases would females compete over social rank if you consider multiple generations. Maybe females would be expected to compete much more fiercely. So it influences our understanding of the evolution of infanticide, for example. Then it should also influence the evolution of dominant style, which is something that we are actually currently looking at in the team with Elise Huchard and Yves, and also how choosy males and females should be. If we consider multiple generations, maybe we would expect males to be more choosy than females. And that's something, the last point is something that we have already some data for. And just to remind you, again, this is displaying just the hierarchy among the males. So you have in green the philopathic males. They start in the male hierarchy at the very top because they have the rank inherited from the mother, and they keep this rank across their tenure. Whereas immigrant males, they start at the very bottom and only slowly increase in rank. And they've looked at the effect of rank on the probability or the likelihood of males to invest in courting high-ranking females. And you see here from the test result is a very strong effect. So the higher the male rank is, the higher in rank a male is, the more time he will invest in courting the top-ranking female. Immigrant males, low-ranking immigrants, they also would like to court high-ranking females, but they have to spend a lot of time recovering from interacting with higher-ranking males. They have to hunt for themselves, find food and all of that, so they don't have this opportunity. And also the top-ranking females, they are courted by the high-ranking males, so they cannot really get access to that. But when they increase in rank, as soon as they get into the higher rank, they invest in courting top-ranking females. So in fact, if I took you to the Ngorongoro crater today and we visited together the Lemala clan, and we found the alpha female, in 100% of times, you will find within a diameter of 10 meters, Makala is the highest ranking male of the Lemala clan, a philopathic male. So this is extreme, and for weeks and months, he's going to do that. I want to end with an anecdote, which is something that I often am advised not to do, but it really illustrates this, the male tactic nicely. And this is the case of the male displayed there. He is licking a female, and he has invested every minute he could in shadowing, courting this female in a very friendly way. And this female is not anybody, it's an alpha female of one of the clans, and she is the female that has the shortest interbirth interval that we've ever had in any female. And she has always picked him, or almost always, for almost all her litters, she has picked him as a father. And as a result, he is the male together with another male, the highest number of grand offspring of any male that we've ever seen. He didn't produce many offspring, but because he managed to get the heart of this alpha female, he hitchhiked on the silver spoon effect, and he produced the highest number of grand offspring. With this, I want to thank my colleagues again that have inspired all of this work, the authorities that have allowed us to do this work, and the funding bodies that have financially supported the work. And thank you also to the team of the Evolutionary Anthropology group for very warmly welcoming me into their group.
Within the clan, do you have many matriline or just one? So how is the rhythmness within one clan between female?
So the question, maybe for those that don't hear everything, was whether we have many matrilines or only a few matrilines. It changes a lot over time in the clan, between clans. Sometimes if you have an alpha female that lives for a long time, you will only have one large matril, or you will have several, there's always several, but the skew, if you want, is much larger than if you have a lot of turnovers. So usually it's I would suspect, it depends a bit how you define the matriline, which is something we've been debating about. But if you consider all the offspring of a female as a matriline, then you don't have many usually, maybe between 5 and 8.
And you talk about infanticide?
Yep.
Is it related to this number of matriline or how when you have infanticide, who is committing infanticide?
We haven't looked at that specifically. I don't think it's directly related to the number of matrilines, because you can have infanticide also within matrilines. It's always a higher ranking female that will commit infanticide on offspring of lower ranking females, that's for sure. But it can be within the same matriline. You also have coups where lower ranking matrilines will challenge the top ranking matriline. Usually you also have it in the lower areas of the hierarchy. But during these coups, they can be violent. Luckily, in our area, they are very rarely violent, but if they are violent, you always have offspring disappearing. So these can be actually quite closely related offspring. And that matches a bit what we think is happening in terms of competition between females. We really think that as a female in the higher ranks, for sure, you have to make sure that your offspring survive. So there's really a competition in terms of getting support, continuous support. But it has also a potential problem in that if you raise 2 daughters, they may team up against you as a mother. And we've had quite a few cases where twin daughters, once they became adult, have actually overtaken their mother. These usually are not violent coups, but they happen actually quite regularly.
I have a question, it's not completely clear in my head. Is the first part of your talk about the bystanders? those conflictual interaction. Are you saying this is thinking about the cause or the consequence? I'm gonna start again. Ask another question. I need to think.
I'm curious about the new clans. How do they form? Because obviously, when you got a new clan, then you got elite or high rank, I presume. So, what prevents you to build a new clan, and or is it regulated at the ecological scale?
That's an interesting question. It happens, unfortunately for us to know more about it. It doesn't happen often. We have a mosaic of clans. It's all covered, and also in other areas where hyenas have been studied over long term. It's not that they just go and start a new clan. There is no space if you want. There's always already a clan there. But what we've had is, for one reason or the other, a clan went extinct. And then what usually happens is that females from an existing clan, usually the largest clan, they enter that territory, that area, because they're territorial. They enter that area together and form the new clan, if you want. But they bring their hierarchy with them, if you want, so they know the hierarchy among themselves, and they start a new clan. They're joined by males. We only had a case at the very beginning where one clan collapsed. We don't know exactly why, and there was only a subadult female, an adult male, and 2 immigrant males left, and they were joined by 3 females from another clan. These females were at the bottom of the hierarchy at the beginning, but because when they started to reproduce, they started to get support from their offspring, and eventually they managed to outrank the resident hyenas, especially the one that was subadult and was not producing fast enough to have enough support to outrank the new females. So this is a bit what we can say. There have been cases recently in the Masai Mara where the clan has split into different clans, but you always have multiple individuals going together and starting a new clan together. There's no single individual where we could see, okay, an individual goes into an area, another individual comes and tests how is the dominance between these. That would be what we would love to do, but we don't. What we do know, based on interactions between individuals from different clans, that's what we actually used in one of our study, is that if 2 individuals meet in a third territory, so they are from clan A and B, and they meet in clan C or in a no man's land area, always the one that is closer to home is going to dominate the one that is further away from home. So if you want, you can translate the social support into confidence. At least that's what, when we talk to each other, that's what we use. So they are more confident because they know if something happens, they will get support, or they're more likely to get support from their clanmates. And we know that with increasing distance, of course, the likelihood that someone gets support decreases. We've tested that.
So you described this spoon effect, but I guess there are exceptions, like social, improvement, are there, and do you understand when they happen? Like, when do offspring born in low-ranked mothers manage to make it to the top of the hierarchy eventually?
It's a very good question. We are working on that. We need maybe a bit more data on that. We have COOs, like I explained before. We have, I don't know how many we have now, so we are getting to a number that we can work with now. So clearly, if I can give you, again, examples that should illustrate what happens. We've had an alpha female that had only sons 8 times in a row. So she had 8 litters. They were only sons. She was an alpha female. And eventually her older sisters said, enough is enough. She kept producing daughters, so she kept having support. All the sons of the alpha female, they dispersed. And she made a coup. She overtook her. So we think it's really driven by the dynamics of reproduction, survival. We also had disease outbreaks coming in and really knocking down the top-ranking matrilines more than other matrilines, and then lower-ranking matrilines being able to rise in rank. So these are the kind of things, but I think behind everything is the social support. If a low-ranking female manages to reproduce, and some are quite good, they manage to get food at the periphery of the territory, they are good hunters, so they manage to have offspring that survive, daughters that stay, and then they can raise in rank.
So you say that sometimes a male can become the alpha person. Then does he choose to stay? Or does he disperse?
They can stay for some time, but usually they disperse. I mean, most males disperse in general. And as an alpha male, you will have a lot of related females in the clan. As the son of the alpha female, you will have quite a lot of relatives in the clan, so it's wise to leave the clan. And we have a slight bias. We didn't have at the time when we studied, but now I think it's significant. We have a slight bias towards sons of lower ranking females being more likely to stay, to become philopatric. Probably, we think, because they have more females that are not related, not closely related to them.
Thank you very much. It was super interesting, and it's based on an inclusive fieldwork. I'm very impressed. I've got one question. I'm very impressed by the size of the clan and the density of hyenas that you have in your site. To what extent do you think some results that you are showing are really generalizable to other systems with lower density or smaller clan? For example, where I work, we've got clans of 14 individuals. So that's a big gap.
Yeah.
And what's your gut feeling about, like, for example, the relationship, like, would we expect higher tolerance of the lower ranking individuals in other sites?
Well, it's one of
the sides also.
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's one of the things, at least for the dominant style, are they more aggressive, all that we are looking into now, here with Ecologie-Evolution. We know some of our results are affected by clan size. For example, the likelihood of males to coordinate their clan choice depends on the clan size, because the benefits of going together as a closely related male, that's at least how we explain it, increase when clan size is large, because resistance is going to be larger, and the disadvantages of going together into a large clan of, having a twin brother that competes for the same females are lower in a large clan, because you have many females, so you don't compete very fiercely over access to these females. So that's one thing that we know is affected by clan size. We also know that coherence, so the way they move and the way they, for example, defend carcasses against neighboring groups changes with clan size. So if you have, and we've had clans that were very small. I told you about this case where a clan collapsed and it was down to 4 individuals. Then we had 3 coming, that's only 7 individuals. From there we know that they're very coherent. staying together all the time. There's very little competition if you want, because if they manage to hunt, everybody can eat. They reproduce very well. I would expect, it's a bit difficult to know, but I would expect infanticide to be very rare in these cases, because everybody is producing well and all. But we haven't studied all of these questions.
You said social dominance is strongly socially inherited. But how did you separate genetic from maternal effects in your analysis?
We had adoptions. So we used adoptions. They're not common, they're actually very rare. That's why it took quite a number of years, and we had to pull data from the Serengeti and from Ngorongoro to get enough adoptions. But it's very clear, if a cub is adopted by, from a low-ranking mother by an alpha female, which has happened, the offspring will have the rank just below the alpha. There's always the rank just below the social mother. We didn't manipulate, we didn't take cubs and give them to other females. They wouldn't want. They usually just suckle their own cubs, but in few cases, we know from genetics and also from the ear markings, they were adopted.
Great talk, thank you very much. You mentioned that the males, when they disperse, they maintain their dominance for 2 years in the former clan, right? And I was wondering how this translates into variance in reproductive success in males compared to females. If they reproduce also in the clan where they come from.
So we think they choose the better clans for a starter. They seem to manage to join the better clans. So they have more females available in the new clan that are likely to accept them, to choose them. And they can spend more time courting females than the lower born, thanks to going back, feeding at home, and not wasting time having to hunt on their own, all of that. So that's, we think, mechanism behind it.
Using the previous clan where they've been?
In the natal clan?
Yes.
No, this we have never seen. I wouldn't exclude that they would try, but we have seen males exploring, starting to join, intrude into other clans, and during this period, mating at home. So clearly they were sexually interested in females, sexually mature, and they mated at home before they eventually joined the group. So this we had, but I don't think, actually there may be one case, I'll have to check. And then it's difficult, okay, are they members, already members of the new group? How established are they if it happens within a window of 6 months? Because they keep going back. Have they decided to be in the new group, or have they actually come back, decided to be philopatric for a few months, sire and offspring, and then finally decide to go to that new? We did have one such case, and it was a bit of a headache in which box to put him. So we often treat him a bit separately depending on the question. But yeah.
If I may, just in general, is there sex difference in the variance in reproductive success?
It's what we are currently studying. There is a difference, and there is a paper published from the colleagues in Kenya that showed that males, the reproductive skew at the first generation is higher in males than in females. So a bit what you see usually. But we'll tell you more, Martha will tell you more hopefully soon about it.
Yeah, it's just about the relationship between social support, male dispersal, and female dominance. Did you say that social support was the cause or the consequence of male dispersal? Because you have male dispersal, and because females stay in the same place, and have the same with the human population I'm working with, obviously you have a lot of kin around you. That's a consequence of the dispersal pattern. Are you saying it's the mechanism linking the dispersal pattern to the female dominance clan system? Or are you saying that it's because of social support that the whole system emerged? see what I mean? Is social support responsible for the emergence of the system? Maybe the maintenance. Once you have male dispersal established and you have all those kin around, then you can have dominance, female dominance happening or being maintained. Like, what's the? I wasn't sure I completely understood the relationship between those three. Yes.
Well, it's difficult to go back in time to the very origins of it, but from what we see between females and males that meet either in the female or the male's territory or in a third territory, it doesn't matter. The female can be dominant, the male can be dominant. If a female goes into a clan where the male is the resident, the male will always dominate the female. Whereas the other way around, it's always the female, or, you know, it's totally independent of the sex.
Yeah. So in your paper, social support was key, you showed, for explaining patterns of female dominance, or what exactly was this explaining or dispersal? Which aspect of hyena society is explaining?
That is, the social support is driving
Yes.
the emergence of dominance.
Okay, that's why you said.
Yeah.
Female dominance.
Dominance.
Yeah, that's why you said.
Yeah.
Now you're telling me that, well, you showed us that any sex can be dominant.
Yeah.
So that's just what you mean, you know.
So if none of them has more social support,
yeah,
I would expect a 50-50 outcome if you want.
Yes.
But if either sex has more support, the one with more support will dominate the other, independent of their sex.
Yeah. It's just a byproduct of the male dispersal.
In the clan, yes.
Yes. You would have the reverse if it was a female dispersal society.
Yes.
Then you have no kin. So I guess to me it's a byproduct, and it doesn't explain why you have male or female dispersal in the first place.
So you're wondering about the dispersal, actually, why they disperse.
Yeah. Well, I guess you talked about it at the very beginning, to find new young females.
Yeah.
But there was a relationship between those three things that wasn't so clear to me. Where social support is a byproduct of male dispersal, which leads to then female dominance in the clan. So it's like a mechanism linking those two. Is it what you're saying? Was this your argument?
Yes, and dispersal comes from the fact that most clans contain more young females. And the clans that contain most young females will not be your own clan, based on the female mate preference.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have anything to do with social support. Female preference is independent of social support. So the dispersal is a product of female mate preferences.
Yeah. Social support is a product of dispersal.
Yeah.
No, asymmetries.
Yes, or asymmetries of dispersal. And then female clan dominance is a product of all those kin around.
Yeah.
Now, in human population, when this happens, female don't end up being dominant or matriarchal. So what would explain the dominance pattern in females in spotted hyenas that we don't have in humans? It's just curiosity, really. You have a matriarchal society in humans, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
No, but it's still men who have power.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, there's a lot of female kin around.
I think it's really everything. So I would think that they really sorry.
Well, one of the things that may be different is in hyenas, the males, the fathers don't know who their offspring are. And in human societies, I think they probably assume or think they know. And they would treat their own offspring differently, nepotistically, if you want, and maybe get the support also from their offspring. Whereas in hyenas, males don't know who their offspring are. So they cannot build these bonds and social relationships. Otherwise, it would be different, I would expect. If a male knew and the daughter and sons knew who their father is, they could team up also with the father. So they would have similar support. So a male that joins a group and one of these crazy guys that has a lot of offspring in a certain clan, if he knew his offspring, if they knew him, he could get a lot of support, potentially, and outrank. I mean, because the males with the highest number of offspring that we had have more offspring than the female with the highest number of offspring. Females can only have, I think the maximum was 20 something, and the best male we had, he had 48 offspring. So they can have more support potentially in the new group, but they don't support each other because they don't know each other. And that might be a reason why females actually, except in this last case, they usually switch partners. They very often have a different mate, maybe to confuse, and they also mate with males when they're not in estrus, maybe to confuse paternity. At least that's how we could explain that part. Not convinced. Can talk more.
It says the exact rank of every individual.
So we, at the very beginning, we just try to see as many interactions as possible with all the individuals. We still do that. And we build a matrix based on the behavior, subordinate, dominance, signs, signals, acts, and all of that. And you can establish quite a nice linear hierarchy based on that. And then you continue from there. And because the rank inheritance is so strong, we can feed new individuals directly into the hierarchy, put them just below the mother, and the new immigrants we add to the very bottom usually until we see interactions that maybe suggest a different ranking, and then we adjust if we see it multiple times. It's all based on behavioral interaction observations.
Yeah, but I have a question. Because you have 30 years of scope of range time range, have you noticed I don't know, change in the sociality? I don't know in which extent this place is impacted by climate change and everything, but have you I don't know, noticed or studied some change in the social dynamics that can be attributable, the imputable, I'm not sure about the word, but to environmental change in environmental condition? Because I would expect, for example, if I don't know how the population is going, but if they decrease in size, right? Maybe you have more turnover in dominance that might impact dispersal, say, I don't know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it relates a bit to the question before of the clan size. What we've had really is quite a dramatic increase in the first 10-15 years in clan sizes and total population size. How much that was related to climate change, we don't know for sure. We suspect that before we started the project, there was a change in prey abundance, so the population went down, and then it started to recover. So from that, what we have seen is, again, it's always on the clan level that things happen, at least for us, for what we can see. Of course, you have an overall abundance that is probably determined by the prey abundance in the environment, not just in Ngorongoro, but because they can go outside to feed also the Serengeti, the greater Serengeti ecosystem. And that's not easy for us to estimate because we don't do research outside in Ngorongoro. So what we do think, we haven't really looked much into that, but with the increase in clan size and overall population density, You have density dependence effects. Mothers will be less successful at rearing offspring. They will find it more difficult to find food. Competition increases, and again, I haven't looked at the data, but it is possible that you have more challenges because there's just more influencing factors coming into the game and less leverage, if you want, for the individuals or the clan to compensate. For example, in early days, low-ranking individuals, they intruded into other clans all the time. Probably because clan sizes were smaller, they had less resistance by the resident ones to kick them back out because they were feeding and they were happy. So these are the kind of things that we are seeing, but on the level of the social dynamics, we haven't really looked very closely at the data, but I would say yes. Again, cohesion, they stick around together, these kind of things, they will change with changes in population size. Whether they are driven to what extent, at least in the time window that we have, by climate change, I cannot really tell you. We've had other changes. We had a big increase in invasive weeds spreading over the crater, which has influenced prey abundance in some of the clans, but less so in others. So that will have an effect, or has had an effect, on those that have had this invasive weed spreading, because there's no prey animals anymore in these clans for large periods of time. So these are the things that we can see. Whether the invasive weed is connected to climate change, probably. We don't have the data right now to show that.
Okay, let's make it.